Don't be suspicious.
No.
Don't be suspicious.
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 Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
The data don't lie, people do.
Hello, my tenacious little trackers of tampered timestamps, and anybody new who has just tuned in. This is the first of 12 videos where I break down into plain English the significance of my last month's independent forensic analysis on the digital evidence in the Karen Reid case. This video focuses on the 5:07 AM ring camera file. It's one of the most talked about pieces of evidence in this entire case, and you may have seen it in the media. Where you won't see it is in the FOIA production on the DA's website. This file was produced by an Amazon ring camera. They record motion-triggered video clips. When something moves in the camera's field of view, it starts recording. Each clip gets saved automatically with a file name that encodes the exact moment of the recording down to the millisecond. The file name of this file is 1643450878000.mp4. That number is a Unix timestamp, a universal way of expressing time as a single large number counting milliseconds since January 1st, 1970. When you convert it, you get January the 29th, 2022 at 5:07:58 AM Eastern Standard Time. This is 65 seconds of footage from the driveway camera at One Meadows, Officer John O'Keefe's address in Canton, Massachusetts, the morning that his body was found. Now, I want to go back to what I showed you just before the intro. Karen Reid drives a black Lexus with a beige interior. If you've followed this case at all, you know the car. In the copy that was in circulation prior to the sealing order, when you see the interior of this car, it looks almost normal, almost like what it should be. But in the version shown to the jury in Trial 2, the contrast has been pushed up so aggressively that the entire scene changes character. What should be a clearly visible beige interior now looks key lime green, and everything else looks overexposed, altered. I'm not going to tell you what to think about that. I'll just point out that these are supposed to be the same piece of evidence, the same file, shown to two juries that were deciding Karen's fate. One of the things that forensic analysis does is it documents exactly what a file contains at a mathematical level. And one of the first things you do when you analyse evidence is you hash it. You make a mathematical fingerprint of the file. If anyone changes even a single pixel, the hash changes. Pin that, we'll come back to it. As part of the FOIA production, the Norfolk County DA's office released an index of ring camera files from One Meadows Avenue. It was generated from Ring's own servers and printed to PDF by an employee of the DA's office. The index covers January 24th through to January 31st, 2022, the very week of the incident. 175 files are listed, but only 106 were produced, that is, handed over to the public. 69 were withheld. Now, of all 175 files listed across that entire week, exactly 2 fall within the window between 12:30 AM and 6 AM on January 29th, 2022. 2 files. This one at 5:07 AM and a second one at 5:45 AM. Karen Reid's arrival home at approximately 12:36 AM, which should have triggered the motion sensing driveway camera at One Meadows, doesn't appear in the index at all. Not withheld, not unlisted, just not there. So when you step back and look at the full picture, what was recorded, what was produced, what was shown to juries, you're starting from a very narrow evidentiary base. One 65-second clip covering one specific moment of one specific morning. If you watched the intro video to this series, you probably already have a basic idea of what binary forensics is. And if you've been paying attention to this trial at all, you probably know what hashing is. So let me get specific about something that is applicable to all of these files. When evidence is presented in court, there's a legal obligation to prove that what you're showing to the jury is authentic. For digital files, that means proving the file is what it claims to be. And the way you prove that, under both federal evidence and rules of Massachusetts evidence, is by demonstrating that the file matches the original source. Not a processed version, not a re-encoded copy, the original. The file as it existed on the recording device before anybody touched it. That word, original, has a very specific meaning here, and I want to be precise about it because there are actually 3 different things people might mean by it, and confusing them is where things went wrong in this case. Not mentioning any names, White Claw Bev. The true original is the raw video as it existed on the DVR system or ring server the moment the camera stopped recording. Nobody has touched it, nothing has been done to it, and if you hash that file, that is, take its mathematical fingerprint, you get a unique string of characters. If you hash it again tomorrow, you get the same string because nothing changed. A forensic copy is what proper evidence handling produces. You take the true original, copy every single bit exactly, and verify that the copy's hash matches the original hash. Identical hashes means identical files. Only then is that copy now legally authenticated as an exact duplicate of the original. That's the standard. That is how digital evidence is supposed to enter a courtroom. A processed file is something else entirely. It's a file that has been run through software, in this case FFmpeg, that rewrites the container, re-encodes the content, and changes the structure. The moment that happens, the hash changes. It can never match the true original again, because it isn't the original. It's a derivative, a new file that was created from the original, but it is not the original, and it is not a forensic copy of the original. And here's why that matters. Every single file presented to the juries in Karen Reid's 2 trials carries FFmpeg fingerprints. The binary analysis proves that. These files are processed derivatives. They are not forensic copies of their true originals. Under the rules of evidence, both Massachusetts and federal rules, a processed file cannot be authenticated as the original recording. The question of whether these files match their true originals was never answered in the criminal court. That very question is now before a federal court, and the binary forensic analysis documents mathematically and reproducibly that these files cannot be authenticated as originals because they carry the fingerprints of software that should never have touched them. But here's where things get really interesting. The same Ring camera that produced the other 106 files, the same device, the same firmware, the same Amazon Ring system, the same production process, those 106 files become our control group. They tell us what a normal produced file from this camera looks like. When you analyse all 106 controls, a completely consistent picture emerges. They all share the same structure, the same format markers, the same encoding characteristics. And critically, none of them carry an FFmpeg encoder tag. FFmpeg is a piece of software, free, powerful, widely used. It processes video files, converts formats, edits content, assembles clips together. It's the tool of choice for anyone who needs to manipulate a video file, and it leaves a specific fingerprint when it's been used. None of the 106 control files shows any sign of FFmpeg processing. That is the baseline, and that is what processed Ring camera video looks like. Now we look at the subject file. It carries an encoder tag identifying a specific version of FFmpeg's encoding library. None of the 106 control files have this. In some cases, there is at least an argument for redaction, blurring license plates, obscuring personally identifiable information. Those are legitimate reasons, even if the way it was done raises other questions. But FFmpeg is not used for that purpose. There is no legitimate reason for this file to have been processed this way, but it was. This is the most significant finding, and I want to make sure it lands clearly. Inside every MP4 file are timing table, a frame-by-frame schedule that tells your video player exactly when to display each frame and how long for. One of these tables is called the CTTS table. The name doesn't matter. What matters is what it represents. In all 106 control files from this camera, the CTTS table is absent. Ring cameras don't produce one. It simply doesn't exist in genuine output from this Amazon system. In the subject file, the CTTS table has 1,292 entries. And that table exists because FFmpeg was assembling video from multiple separate segments, or clips if you prefer, whose timing didn't perfectly align with what was already in that video. When that happens, FFmpeg has to write out a timing correction for every single frame individually. That's why there are 1,292 entries, one for each frame that was out of sync. And it's why that table exists in a file where it shouldn't be. This means this file is not a continuous recording, it is an assembly of clips. The assembly has 3 specific join points, called stitch pairs, at around 16 seconds, 58 seconds, and 63 seconds into the file. Each one is a mechanical signature that can only be produced when 2 separately encoded video segments are joined together. They cannot occur in footage captured continuously by the same camera. They are the seams where the clips were stitched together. At around 42.6 seconds into the recording, there's a single frame with a duration of 650 milliseconds. The normal frame duration, at 20 frames per second, is 50 milliseconds. This frame lasts 13 times longer than it should. The gap represents approximately 13 frames of content that is simply no longer in the file. You wouldn't necessarily catch one missing frame in a video. Your eye can't register that 50 milliseconds. But in this video, you can actually see it, because the frame lasts 13 times too long, and it's written in the timing table in plain numbers. Now, every one of the 106 control files from this camera records at a resolution of 1920 by 1080 pixels, full high definition. The subject file records at 960 by 544 pixels, exactly half the width, exactly half the height. Not approximately half, exactly half. Ring cameras do not have a half resolution recording mode. 960 by 544 does not exist in ring camera firmware. This resolution is consistent with a re-encoding downscale, the original footage rendered out at half its native size. The other 106 files from this same camera are full HD, but this one isn't. Recall when I said at 20 frames per second, each frame should be on the screen for 50 milliseconds? The very first frame of this file has a duration of 3 milliseconds. That's 6% of the normal frame duration. The very last frame has a duration of 209 milliseconds, more than 4 times all the other frames. Both of these are known as FFmpeg assembly artifacts. A tiny stub at the start and an inflated pad at the end are what FFmpeg produces when it assembles a file from clips or segments. They are deterministic, meaning they're produced the same way every time, and they're recognizable as assembly fingerprints. And neither is producible by ring camera hardware recording continuously. So let's just recap what we've learned here. A file that should look structurally identical to 106 other files from the same camera doesn't look like any of them, on 5 separate measurements, using 5 completely independent indicators. It is categorically different from the entire control population. It was processed through software that has no legitimate reason to touch Ring camera evidence. It was assembled from at least 4 separate clips. Content is missing from it at 42 seconds. It's been rendered exactly half the native resolution of the camera. It carries assembly artifacts at its first and last frames. And the version shown to the jury in Trial 2 looks way different from the copy that was in circulation prior to Trial 1. To wrap up, I just want to be precise about what the file can and can't tell us. Binary analysis tells you what is in the file and what the file structure shows. It doesn't tell us what was in the missing 13 frames, for example. It doesn't tell us what the original 4 segments contained before they were assembled. The binary establishes that the content is absent and that the file is in assembly, but it doesn't tell us what that absent content showed. Only an independent expert with access to the defense files can verify whether this is consistent with their discovery production or not. The next video we'll talk about is the 5:45 AM video from the same driveway Ring camera. And what you're going to see as we build through each video is a pattern. Same tools, the same fingerprints, across files from multiple different cameras, multiple different custodians, multiple different locations, all converging on the same window of time, all showing the same signatures. Each file might be explained away, but together they tell a different story, and that is the story that this series is telling. Michael Proctor filed his answer in the federal civil rights case recently. 30 pages, he denies everything, and he says, prove it. Bing bing, challenge accepted. 'Cause you know.
The data don't lie, people do.